Hello everybody and welcome into my latest live video. Today it is the 6th of June, it's Tuesday, and the year is 2023. And as of this moment, as far as I can tell, I am the only content creator on the entire platform of YouTube to have a review of the brand new TP-Link BE19000 Wi-Fi 7 router. It's a little weird because there's no Wi-Fi 7 network cards, but sometimes you have a Wi-Fi 7 network card before there are Wi-Fi 7 routers. Other times, the opposite happens. There's a chicken and an egg thing. Somebody's got to go first. They're coming, all right? Wi-Fi 7 adapters are coming right around the corner. Now, this router was supposed to be released in the first quarter of this year, and that came and went. Then I ordered it from Amazon as a pre-order, and it said I would have it on June the 2nd. It would be released on June the 1st. I'd have it on June the 2nd. And then June the 1st came and they said it's not scheduled to arrive until July 29th. So I got frustrated. Somebody just knocked on my door and we're live. Bear with me for a second. Oh, it was Amazon delivering more items for more future content. Oh, if they had only been here 4 minutes earlier. All right, I apologize for that. Now, this is a one-man operation. If everything seems amateurish to you, that's because it is. I do everything with very little help. Normally, lately, been having Camera Girl help me with close-ups, and she's done the thumbnails, like the thumbnails for the video today. But everything else is on me, and so everything you see is real, it's authentic, it's genuine, it's sincere. There's no agenda here other than trying to get to the gist of what things truly are, cut through the marketing nonsense, cut through the hype, and let's see, is Wi-Fi 7 something worth having? This is a very expensive router, and the only way I was able to get it in time, because I was really looking forward to being one of the first people to do the reviews on this router, is by buying it at Best Buy. And you know what? I buy things at Best Buy. I haven't shopped there in a long time. And I saw it was available at Best Buy, and I thought it was like weeks ago. And I thought, well, I'd rather order it from Amazon in case I want to return it. I suppose you could probably return it to Best Buy with the same return period, but I'm just very comfortable with Amazon. So I thought I'll wait, a week or two longer just to get it from Amazon, which ended up only delaying this video. This video, it turns out, could have been done last month. So I'm kicking myself in the butt, but luckily for me, no other content creator has done this video yet that I have found. So at least if I'm not the first, which I believe I am one of the first. And I think that matters with technology, because in a couple of years' time, you'll be turning your noses up at it, going Wi-Fi 7. Oh, we're at Wi-Fi 12. Why would you want Wi-Fi 7? That's old. So everything in tech is very, very time sensitive. It's perishable. I don't want to do a review on a banana 3 weeks after I bought the banana. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to be a good banana anymore. So tech doesn't quite move as fast as fruit, being perishable, but it's pretty quick. Now, I want to show you the only information I can find on this router comes from the folks who make it at TP-Link. And if you followed my other router reviews, I did a couple of Wi-Fi 6E routers, including the upgrade to the Netgear Nighthawk router that I use, which is Wi-Fi 6, and REX 120 is the model. And upgraded that to the REX 500. Complete waste of money. For me, it was a complete waste of money. No benefit of range, no benefit of performance. If anything, the performance was worse because the processor in the newer model was slower than the processor of the model I have now. And that made a big difference when I attached a USB drive to the back of it to use as a NAS, which I don't do anymore because now I have a NAS, but that's neither here nor there. For $500, which it was very expensive, I thought, I expected some benefit, which I got none of. And then TP-Link, I tried their 6E router, sent that one back, same situation. That router got really, really hot. And apparently that's normal for that router, but not for routers that I have. It's kind of put me off. I also didn't like the shape of it, kind of looked like a big spider. And so when this router was announced, I kind of got excited about it because it has a very different look to it. And even though I don't have anything Wi-Fi 7, I am starting to be interested in upgrading finally to 2.5 gigabit to connect to the Synology and to say like the streamer that's hardwired. All the new machines I build, almost universally, those motherboards have 2.5 gig Ethernet adapters or LAN jacks, Ethernet jacks. But I always run at 1 gig. All my clients run at 1 gig. I've never met anybody in my real life that runs 2.5 gig. But as I've been taking some of these live videos and then re-rendering them out at 4K, I'm getting files that are 30 to 60 gigs in size, and I like to back them up over to the NAS. And that can take a good 10 minutes at 1 gig internet connection. Some people have some confusion about speeds. They think your speed is limited to your internet speed. And that's true if you're leaving your house or you're leaving the building. The speed you can have in the building is whatever you can afford to put in there. 10 gig, you have 10 gig in the building. When I'm copying a file from the streaming computer to my Synology NAS, it's not going out to the internet, it's staying in the building. So I can have one speed in the building for my data transfer and then another speed for when I'm going outside to the internet, then that's limited to the speed of my internet service provider. So I'll make some networking videos to kind of go through this and explain it and how every time you plug in another network switch, you lose a port. So I was talking with Mitch, and he's got two 8-port switches. He bought an 8-port switch because he ran out of plugs. He likes to hardwire everything, and there's usually only 4 plugs in the back of a router. And he filled those 4 plugs up and realized he needed to buy a switch. So he bought an 8-port switch. But the problem is, the switch has to plug into the back of the router. So you're losing one of your ports on the switch and on the router. It's no different than when you buy a surge protector. So you've got 2 plugs in the wall, right? And now you want to plug a third or a fourth thing, and you can't because you filled up both plugs. So you unplug one thing and you plug in the surge protector. So now you've just used that other plug for the surge protector, takes up a plug. Then you can plug things into the surge protector. But when you fill that surge protector up, you need to use a plug to plug in another surge protector, which means now you've lost 2 plugs. So if you had a 6-port surge protector, you think about how many plugs you're using. You're using the plug in the wall that the surge protector is plugged into. If you plug another surge protector into that surge protector, you've lost a second. So the number that you're using partially is due to the number of expansion bays that you're plugging in or power splitters. So a switch is like an Ethernet or a network splitter, and you can do what's called cascading, where you can plug one switch into another, and they usually stack them. And it can look like, if you visualize a waterfall, the data's flowing, although it flows up and down. And you can do that a certain number of times. Anyway, when you plug so when he fills up that 8-port switch and he realizes he needs another 8-port switch, he's got to take a port from that switch, plug it into the previous switch. So now he's lost 2 ports. And then that switch at the end has to be plugged into the router. So on that switch in the middle, he's lost 2 just on that one. So that 8-port switch now has 6 ports available, and the new 8-port switch has 7 ports available. Anyway, I will talk more about this and demonstrate it in upcoming videos about networking. It's very, very simple, and it's very similar to power and how we split power when we need more power plugs. It's very, very similar, and it's not very complicated. For me to go to 2.5 gig for my streamer and my NAS, I need to buy either a 2.5 gig switch that I plug into the back of my 1 gig router, and anything plugged into the 2.5 gig switch will work and talk to each other at 2.5 gig. But anything going out to the internet is now, or going out to the router, to anything plugged into the router, is going to be slowed down to the 1 gig of the router, and then slowed down further to whatever speed of the internet if it's leaving the building. So if I have two NASs and I plug one NAS into my 1 gig router and one NAS into my 2.5 gig router, and the streaming computer, we plug that into the 2.5 gig router. When I copy a big file to or from the NAS to the streamer or the streamer to the NAS plugged into the 2.5 gig, the files will transfer at about 330 megabytes per second, thereabouts. But when I try to transfer a file to or from the NAS plugged into the switch, also in the same building, but the switch is only 1 gig instead of 2.5, then that file is going to transfer one way or the other around 120 megabytes per second. So I'll probably get 350 megabytes per second. I don't know because I haven't done it yet. And I thought, okay, things get messy, right? So if I have to buy a little 2.5 gig switch, then that's got to be plugged into a power strip, and I don't have any more room on my power strip, which means I either have to buy a bigger power strip. The table that it sits on is now going to be overcrowded with another device. That's the switch that's got to get wired into the back of the router. And then the streamer, instead of being wired into the router, will wire into the switch. And the Synology NAS will wire into the switch. That's a lot of ugly cables, and it's kind of kludgy, and it's a lot of points of failure that are potentially there. So here's my logic. What if I get this Wi-Fi 7 router, which first of all doesn't look like anything else on the market? I'm a big fan of that. Secondly, has 4 2.5 gig ports on the back of it already instead of the 4 1 gig ports I have now, which I didn't really care for because I didn't have any use for it before. Now I do. It's already in here, so I don't have to buy a separate switch. A little 5-port 2.5 gig switch from Asus is $120. Not to mention all the cables and everything you got. And remember, I'm going to lose a port on the back of the router when I plug the switch in, and I lose a port on the switch. So now that 5-port switch is now a 4-port switch. With this, I have 4 ports, all 4. Okay. So that's the justification machine going. Now, this Wi-Fi 7 router is actually one level below their flagship model, which I think is not out yet, because I really wanted the flagship. This has 2.4 gig Wi-Fi, 5 gig Wi-Fi, and 6 gig Wi-Fi, which is really what was introduced in Wi-Fi 6E, was that 6 gig channel. And if you don't have Wi-Fi 6E, you're not using the 6 gig channel anyway. The only thing I have Wi-Fi 6E is this phone, Samsung Galaxy S23. And there's nothing I need to move that big ever on my phone. So they're the most pointless thing to have 6E on my phone. You also need Windows 11. If you have Windows 10, Wi-Fi 6E doesn't work on Windows 10. So not only do you have to have a Wi-Fi 6E wireless card, but you also have to have a compatible operating system and a router that's capable of doing that. Now, all the other Wi-Fis going all the way back will also still work with Wi-Fi 7, Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 5, even going all the way back to 802.11b in 1997 or whatever that was, 1999. That will work with this router. It just won't work any faster. It can only work as fast as it can work, you know? If you're on the freeway in an old jalopy of a car that can only do 30 miles an hour, it can still do 30 miles an hour while everybody else around you is going 80. You're not really slowing them down. They'll go around you, but you're not going any faster because you're on a faster road. So getting this doesn't make anything you have incompatible, and you don't have to replace anything unless you want to replace it with something that's Wi-Fi 7 to take advantage of what Wi-Fi 7 offers, which is what exactly? Well, I'm not exactly sure myself, except it's a little faster and it's supposed to be better range. So when I looked up information on this router, the only information I can find is from TP-Link. So I'm going to go to my Windows capture here on OBS, and I want to share with you a couple of windows before we get this unboxed. First of all, I want to show you the product page on Amazon. So this was on pre-order, and now it says add to cart, but before it was pre-order. Price is $599.99, and that price is locked in. It's the same price at Best Buy. The only difference is Best Buy actually has it. I don't know of any other nationwide retailer that sells this router or would have it in stock. If you do, let me know, but like Micro Center, we don't have those. So I don't know if Micro Center has it because I don't have a Micro Center. This is the only nationwide retailer, sorry, Best Buy is the only nationwide retailer that I'm aware of has it in stock. So Amazon doesn't expect this in stock until July 5th through the 7th, although they told me July 29th was the estimated delivery date. So they can't seem to make up their mind. This screen in the front is customizable. And of course, if you live in a state with sales tax, you can, for me, it's almost 10% sales tax, another $50. This router is $650 after sales tax here in Phoenix. Now, the folks over at TP-Link have a YouTube channel. Right down here, you'll see it says TP-Link. It only has 77,000 subscribers. They don't have very many videos. And this tells you all about Wi-Fi 7, if you're interested in that. And they do a very nice job with their video production, and the video is pretty short. It's only about 3 minutes long. And if you want to learn about this router, they have a promotional video. Again, this is from TP-Link about the all-new Archer BE800, which is also called a BE19000, if that's not confusing enough. TP-Link gives their products 3 different names. It's pretty standard. There's the Archer name, and then there's the Wi-Fi name. And now this is their pretty high production quality 3D graphics video, which again, very short. This one's only about 34 seconds long. That does an explanation from the marketing perspective of what they want to convey to you. But nobody's really done anything in depth with this. And so we're going to make this video essentially into 2 parts. This is obviously part 1. In part 1, what I'm going to do is unbox this and give you my first impressions and my assumptions about what I think it's going to do or what I think the features are that I'm aware of. Then that's going to be the end of this video. We're going to log into it. We're going to check it out. I've got this little mini PC out here so we can log into it, and I can capture the screen and you can see everything and experience it all for the very first time as I experience it for the very first time. I have no special arrangement with TP-Link. In fact, I don't even think they want me to make this video, but I don't care. I was able to purchase this with much thanks to the folks who offer super chat contributions and memberships and Amazon gift cards throughout these videos. And this is what I'm doing with your money, or at least what I get to keep of it after YouTube takes their cut and the government takes their cut. You figure whatever you're giving through YouTube, I get half of it. If you're given $10 in YouTube, I'm going to get $5. If you give an Amazon gift card, I get all of it, just so you know. If you contribute via PayPal, PayPal takes 3%, so I get 97% of it. Anyway, that's how I do things around here. We keep everything real. I don't have any special agenda. I don't have any special rehearsal, training, or script. This is one take. It's live. I have no idea if there's going to be bricks in this box or if this unit is going to power on or not. I suspect none of that's going to happen, but because I haven't done any preparation or rehearsal, just like you go to the store, you bought something, you're going to get it home, you're going to open it up, you're going to take it out of the box, you're going to get your first impression. What I'm trying to do here, for those people who don't get it, is I am trying to share this experience, this real life experience of a product unboxing and first impression and assumption that all of us do when we get home with a product. And in order for me to do that with all sincerity and authenticity, there is no preparation any differently than whatever preparation you would do before you come home from the store with some shiny new toy or gadget. You might have done research, you might not have. A lot of times people go looking for a car and they end up leaving with a car they weren't intending to buy that they didn't know much about. And then you get it home and you get to learn more about the car as you own it. So after the video today, my plan is I'm going to take out the RAX 120 Netgear Nighthawk, and I hope to retire it permanently, because I did retire it when I did the Wi-Fi 6E routers, but it came out of retirement and those Wi-Fi 6E routers went back. I'm hoping we're not going to repeat that. I don't want to send this back. I want to like this router. I wouldn't have spent that much money for it if my goal was to destroy it or to throw shade at it. I really want to like it. Okay, just so we're on the same page here. Now, have I talked enough? Should I actually get to unboxing? Hello to all my friends in blue. Hello to, oh my gosh, look at everybody joining us. 292 people in the chat room. And Rip City Raiders, now been a member for 2 months. He says, keep up the good work and thanks. Well, thanks for continuing your membership. Sarge Tech contributes $5 a little before the show started. He says, here's a little something, something, Uncle Carey. You're appreciated. Hello to you and Marlena. Thank you very much. I appreciate your generosity and your support. And my friends in white, my friends in blue, I appreciate all of you being here today. And I'm going to try and focus on this and not so much on this over here, so we can get something done. Shamim says, hello from Gothenburg, Sweden. See, this is what happens. I think it's really cool when I have viewers in Norway, Sweden, Canada, England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Germany, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand. It's just so cool. Thailand, all over the world. And I happened to stumble on a TV show from Netflix that came out like a year ago. And it's all about the history of Spotify. I love Spotify. I've got it on my phone. I probably use Spotify every day. This idea of buying music CDs or ripping your own music, who cares anymore? Instant streaming. I've got every song ever made in, it's not in my phone, but it's in the internet, and the phone grabs it without buffering. It's just there. You push the button, it's instantaneous. And I did not know anything about Spotify. I knew nothing about its creator or even its point of origin, and it's from Sweden. And I did not know that. And there is a Swedish show that came out called The Playlist. It's available on Netflix, but it is in Swedish, but it does have English subtitles. It's 6 episodes long, and it's a reenactment by actors who are portraying the main characters, whether it's, Per Sundlund, who was the CEO of Sony in Sweden, or if it was Daniel Ek, who was one of the creators, or if it was the attorney, the lawyer, or the main programmer who developed it. And so they'll tell a story from their perspective in episode 1. Like Daniel will say, here's how it got started. And at the end, the guy from Sony, Pierre, he'll say, that's not how it started at all. And then that's the end. The episode 2 is Pierre telling it from his side of what went on. And at the end of that one, the lawyer who represents the negotiating between the music labels and Spotify says, that's not how it happened at all. I'll tell you how it happened. And then that goes to episode 3. And then episode 4, which is where I'm at right now. I watched 3 episodes last night. I got 3 more to go, and I can't stop watching it. It's so fantastic. And I've liked the movie Tetris, which tells that story, which was fascinating. The movie BlackBerry just came out on streaming, and that's the story of the BlackBerry and how they had 50% of the cell phone market. Now they're at 0% and gone. What happened? That's a fascinating story. All reenactments by actors, maybe a little embellished here and there for dramatization. There's one called WeWork, I think, but that one I couldn't get into. I didn't care for it. And then there's one about Uber, and that's the the pinnacle of them all. That one's the best. And I can't think of what that one's called. I'm sure someone in the chat. But I've got to tell you, the only other time I've watched a Swedish television show was The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And they made a little mini series out of it on Swedish TV. And they did have an English audio overdub as well as subtitles. And there were 3 miniseries to follow the books. I was riveted. Now, why that wasn't brought over here, Americans would never even know that this Girl with the Dragon Tattoo version exists. And, you know, at the time, the actors, we never heard of these actors. Now, a couple of them are pretty well known here in America. But at that time, I didn't know who any of these people were. And I was blown away when I watched BlackBerry, because that's a Canadian company, and they're using a lot of Canadian actors. It's a Canadian production company. And Cary Elwes is in there, and I didn't even recognize him. I only saw his name in the credits after the movie was over. He is the guy from The Princess Bride, the prince, you know, the attractive, suave prince. He, you know, that's 40 years ago. I didn't even recognize him. And I was so thrilled, you know, when I saw his name in the credits and which character he played. I had to rewind and go look at it. Oh, look at that. Yes, that is him. Anyway, so I really enjoyed all of these. I don't want to call them documentaries. They're not dry documentaries. These are dramatizations of the events that took place based on real life events that took place. So if you're into that and you're kind of curious how we got where we are, where these companies came from and where they went, those are shows I recommend. And I'm telling you, the playlist, man, I wish I knew about this when it came out back in, I think, 2022. Is it last year it came out? Oh. And by the way, if you know any other reenactments or dramatizations of any technology companies, whether it's Google or Microsoft, you know, going back to like the Pirates of Silicon Valley, which wasn't really a reenactment, but still fascinating facts about the histories of the companies. Yeah, please leave it in the comments and let me know. I love that stuff. That's way better than the stuff that's on TV in general. Brian Madonna says, BlackBerry's on Netflix already. I saw it in the movies like a month ago. Okay, I am going to start this review. We're about half an hour in. I've got all of the disclaimers and all of the here's what to expect, the preface out of the way. So let's get it open and let's have this experience together. Now, generally speaking, just overall generally speaking, most people would not benefit from a router like this. Most people cannot afford a router like this. This is generally, like any other brand new bleeding edge tech, going to be for the tech elite or those who have strong demands for faster data transfers, whether that's for their own personal use or for a business, or they're connecting a ton of Wi-Fi devices, and so they're perhaps saturating the Wi-Fi bandwidth of their current router, and they just need something more powerful because they've outgrown it or they're on the verge of outgrowing it, and this is a good way to build some elbow room out for people who need it. But if you don't need the elbow room, if what you're using now is adequate for what you need, then something like a Wi-Fi 6E router or a Wi-Fi 7 router isn't really for you. One good way to test is how fast is my internet? If you're somebody that has a basic 1 gig or less internet connection, very little benefit for you in general to have a router more than Wi-Fi 5 or 6, quite honestly. I would have at least a Wi-Fi 5, and if you do, you're fine. You don't have to feel like you're being left behind or you're being held back. It's not the case. Wi-Fi 6 is better, but it may not be better for you. You may not notice any difference. So it depends on how you use it. Now, when you get into multi-gig internet, which means above 1 gig, it could be 2, 5, 10. Yes, there are people that have a 10 gig internet connection. Then you need a router that can handle a 10 gig internet connection. And those big Wi-Fi 6E routers, they have big they're called SFP ports. We're 10 gig internet connection. I've never seen a 10 gig internet connection in my life. And it's not available to me, even if I had the money to get a 10 gig internet connection and pay that monthly bill. First of all, I wouldn't use it very often. And secondly, it's not an option. It's not being offered at any price. The infrastructure has to go into the ground, which has to be done by the cable provider or the internet provider. That costs a lot of money to tear up the street and get a crew out there to relay some fiber optic cable to replace the coax, change all the junction boxes out. It's a big, expensive mess. Now, it's an investment for them if people adopt it. If people in that neighborhood, if it's a, what's the word I want? Getting old and I'm having trouble finding words now. If it's a well-to-do neighborhood, the words right on the tip of my tongue, then it makes sense for the cable provider or the internet service provider to invest that money in the infrastructure. If, on the other hand, it's just a regular old everyday suburb around Phoenix with, middle to low income housing, then putting that money in to upgrade the infrastructure to a service these people can't afford and won't use and don't need doesn't make any sense for them. The neighborhood Studio B is in is kind of in the middle. It's not low income, and I would say it's at the upper end of the middle. It may even just be the middle now that I'm thinking about it. Ryan says affluent. Okay, we'll use affluent. That's not the word I wanted, but that works. But that's fine. That's a great word. We'll use it. The neighborhood is going to dictate what kind of internet service is available. So if a neighborhood's just now being built and they're putting the infrastructure in for the very first time, they're laying the roads, it would make sense for the cable provider or the utility provider to put in the fiber now so they don't have to come back and do it later. They don't always, though. Studio A has DSL or cable, but the DSL being provided is 1.5 megabits per second. Not gigabits, megabits. And that's been that way for over 15 years. The phone company has not made any investment at all in the infrastructure. They still show the advertisements for their high-speed internet, and there's fine print on the commercial that says not available in all areas. You know how much that kills me to see that commercial for the last 15 years? Checking the website once every other year or so to see if it's in my area. And it says the fastest DSL you can get is 1.5, and it's never changed. The internet service provider, the cable company, Fox Communications, they've upgraded the nodes and some of the equipment, but it's still all the same cables. And so for that, I get Gigablast, which in their translation means you get 1,000 megabits down and 35 megabits up. Now, if I had full Gigablast, that'd be 1,000 up and down. I don't need that. I mean, I'm only using about 8 to do 1080 live here on YouTube. I need 8 megabits up. But those Wi-Fi 6E routers have the ability to plug in one of those 10 gig SFP ports, or even sometimes 2 10 gig SFP ports. Would you have any benefit? Any of you have use for a 10 gig SFP port? Do you have any 10 gig equipment, or do you have a multi-gig internet connection? How many of you have that? Be very few of you. So as you can imagine, my main concern about this router is I'm going to have a repeat of the Wi-Fi 6 routers where it's for a upper echelon, an upper tier of user, which makes up a very small percentage of users. And they're not going to sell very many of these until the price becomes much more affordable to the average person. And at the same time, internet speeds continue to climb as internet service providers continue to compete and increase their broadband, but this takes time. So yeah, looking at the box, I'm going to read what it says on the box. Unprecedented 19 gigabits per second, 12 stream tri-band Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi 7 unleashes the full potential of the 6 gigahertz band with up to 320 megahertz channels. I don't know what that means. And 11.5 gigabits per second Wi-Fi speeds. Enjoy full access to 8K streaming and high-speed downloading. And it's got a little asterisk. Obviously, you need an internet connection that can provide that. The router can't do that. Ultra smooth Wi-Fi with 4 times lower latency. Oh, that has a little asterisk next to it as well. Multi-link operation, which is called MLO, enables Archer BE800, which is also the BE19000. It's confusing. To transmit data with Wi-Fi 7 clients across the 6 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz bands at the same time, delivering 4 times faster Wi-Fi speeds than Wi-Fi 6 or 6E routers do, or can do. Ultra smooth Wi-Fi with 4 times lower latency. So not only is it 4 times faster, but it responds 4 times faster. So when you send it a command, it responds back 4 times faster. We call that latency or ping. 4 times lower latency than Wi-Fi 6 or 6E routers enables emerging applications like VR and AR, that's virtual reality and alternate reality, video conferencing and online gaming to always run at top performance. Once again, assuming you've got the internet that can handle that kind of data capacity. This also has a higher capacity for the number of wireless devices. This will connect up to 100 devices. This will communicate with multiple devices via 12 streams in tri-band simultaneously. Combined with a powerful CPU, Wi-Fi 7 provides congestion-free signals to your laptop, TV, thermostat, and baby monitor. It's got enhanced security, which is HomeShield. It's easy mesh compatible. I like to see that. It allows, it's got VPN client support, and it offers compatibility with all Wi-Fi generations, regardless of how old. It'll still work with your old stuff, and it won't hold up the new stuff. It won't slow everything else down. Not only does it work, but it won't slow your entire network down as an older router might. So all of that's very promising, so you don't have to replace everything. Although people, I suspect, that would buy this level of router don't have old Wi-Fi devices, right? If you've got that kind of money, you probably keep everything up to date if that's important to you. Paul O'Brien with €2 says, have a Gatorade on me. Hey, thank you, Paul. Charlie says, greetings from Pennsylvania. I'm still waiting on my new mini PC and NPB7 for Minis Forum. He placed his order back on the 11th of May. Yeah, I know they were on pre-sale. I think you'll, I think, once you get it, say it was worth the wait. I have a NAD 9 that I ordered and paid for Minis Forum that DHL has lost. So as long as that hasn't happened to you, DHL is supposed to reach out to me before 5 o'clock today to let me know what the status of the package is. They were literally asking me, what does the package look like? What size is it? How much does it weigh? What's in it? They need to manually look through the warehouse and try and find it. Crazy. Apparently, they don't know what tracking numbers are for. Shout out to Camera Girl for the intros. Camera Girl doesn't do the intros. Oh, by the way, wasn't that a great intro? My sister does the intros. And yeah, shout out to my sister for the amazing intro. Camera Girl did the thumbnails, which you've been seeing recently. And then when I get close-up work, close-up camera work, that's Camera Girl with those nice in focus, handheld steady shots. Yeah. But yes, absolutely. Shout out to both of them for the amazing quality work that they've been doing. All right, now I'm trying to figure out how this box opens. Seems like there's a seam right here. Ah, I guess just the tip rips off. Okay, just there. Whoa, look at this. That's a that's a heck of an unboxing presentation, isn't it? Holy cow, these sides are, what do they have in there? They're heavy. That is weird. All right, well, that'll look great once before it goes into the recycle bin. So glad they put so much time and effort into that. Hey, this is nowhere near as big as I thought it was going to be. Oh, not the first time I've said that. Now, I'm going to figure out how this package opens and get this thing out of this protective... Oh, I see it over this way. This is the, you're never going to use this, put it back in because it's going to tear kind of material they've used to get this thing out. Hey, that's not bad. Yeah, I thought this was going to be wider and taller. I want to bring it up to the camera and we'll look at it together. First chance to look at this together. Obviously, we got the front. We've got some buttons up here. Looks like we have tape. Looks like there's tape on it. It's off. Yeah, there is. Okay, that looks better. Now the antennas are internal, okay? So if you look at TP-Link's videos, you'll see like, or even on the Amazon page, you'll see like an X-ray of where the antennas are. So the antennas are in fixed positions that are tuned to be in those weird positions to give you the best possible signal quality. So you can't screw it up. Coming around to the back of the router, we've got 4 2.5 gig network ports. This is the SFP plus port. I was talking about those SFPs. It's got a little dust cover on it there. It's a bit different looking, and I have never used one of those in my life. Maybe in a couple years when the prices come down. My Synology can't run that fast anyway. I don't know what I would use that for, and I don't have internet that fast, so. So you'll see it says 2.5 gigabit LAN, just below those 4 ports. Then underneath, it says 10 gigabit LAN or WAN. So those WAN or LAN, WAN is the wide area network, meaning your internet service. So even if your internet service is 1 gig or 500 meg or whatever, you're going to go into either one of these blue ports from your cable modem. That's all. This will work with Starlink, and TP-Link even has a video showing how to set this up with Starlink if you're one of those folks who have Starlink. We've got a single USB port back here, so you can plug in, say, a flash drive or a USB drive to share over your network, like a NAS, network attached storage. Or you could use it to perhaps plug in a printer and share that printer across all the computers in your home or your building. We've got a reset button that's recessed, so you'll have to get, typically people will grab a paper clip, straighten it out, probably hold that in for about 10 seconds, I guess. We have an on-off switch, push on, push off. And we have our power adapter. And in the back, we've got the MAC address and serial number, model number, et cetera, et cetera. There's not a whole lot to it. So we're off to a good start. I am pretty happy with what I'm seeing. Yeah, that's going to take up a lot less room on the desk, which is the opposite of what I was going to do, which was to get a 2.5 gig switch and add more stuff to the desk. And then I was going to have to buy a new surge protector because I ran out of plugs and the switch has to plug into something. Well, this will solve all of that and free up space on both the surge. Well, it's not going to take up any more room on the surge protector because one device is going out, and this device is going in, so the same surge protector can stay in place. and it's 2.5 gig, so I don't have to put a switch in. And it's smaller, so the Netgear router I'm using now sits this way. If you can imagine, it sits kind of like this on the table. That takes up quite a lot of space. I will keep this in a vertical orientation, and it'll take up about 1/3 of the amount of space that my current router is taking up. So really hopeful it's gonna work. They've given us a sticker to write your Wi-Fi password on so you don't forget it. You can stick it somewhere on the router, on the bottom of the router. Whereas people like us that buy this kind of equipment, we don't usually need that. Usually, we're more technical people generally, but it's all good. What else do we have in the box? Box is still pretty heavy. It's got another little box in here. I'm going to assume that what's in this other box, typically you're going to get like a 6-foot Ethernet cable. Almost all routers come with an Ethernet cable and a power adapter. And maybe there's documentation, I don't know. It's pretty heavy. Oh, there's a quick installation guide and a little helpful tip to connecting to wireless devices. There's your quick install right there. And the rest of the box appears to be empty. So let's open this up. Oh, what is this? Another little piece of paper? Oh, GNU public license. Who cares? All right, that's just one of those business formalities. So the RJ45 or Ethernet cable they're including is a flat one with metal ends on it. That's kind of fancy. But again, it's a $600 router, so I'm glad they didn't cheap out. They actually give you a pretty high quality flat Ethernet cable. I'm not going to use it, but you know, it's only because I have cables already run. But it's nice that they've included it. They've given us a power adapter. This is a Mickey Mouse style power plug. And the reason it's called a Mickey Mouse power plug isn't because it's cheap. Sometimes people go, oh, look at that Mickey Mouse operation. It's because when you look at the end of the plug, it looks like Mickey Mouse, right? Head, the 2 ears. So it's referred to as a Mickey Mouse power plug. Most often you see that with laptop power adapters. Then we have, what is this? Oh, this is the AC brick. And this is, how many watts? This is, output is 5 amps, 75 watts. That's pretty serious for a router, 5 amps. But that usually relates to how strong the broadcast radios are in the unit, which implies you're going to get really good range out of it. And then finally, and this is a nice touch, instead of getting that paper clip and straightening it out to hit the reset button, they give you this reset tool, which is kind of silly, but you know, I appreciate the thought, even though I probably won't use it. I have these little SIM card removal tools that I use instead. You get these on Amazon. You get them in a package of like 5 or 6. And it's much stronger than that little thin piece of metal. And I will usually just reach in my drawer anytime I need to hit a recess button and use this. Like I say, they give you like 5 of them in a package over at Amazon. It's a SIM card removal tool. And that's great for anytime you need to hit a recess button that is typically a reset button located on routers or even sometimes computers to reset a BIOS. Yeah, they come in handy. And that's everything. There's nothing else in the box. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave these things on top. I'll put this back in the way it was. I'll put the documentation on top, and I'll put the cable on top so I don't throw away the box, forget it's in there. And this doesn't come out. That's everything. Oh, this can go back in. We're done with that. That. Close this up, and then we'll put it over there. Hey, that's really cool unboxing. Okay, so I'm just going to run this to my power outlet over here, so I won't need to undo the cable. I'll just plug that in the back. And plug this in right over here. And plug this in to the adapter. And without plugging anything else into it, I'm just going to simply hit the power button. And let's see what it looks like as it powers on. Kind of move it so you don't get too much glare. Ooh, that's cool. I bet you that blue turns to green when it's ready, and it turns to red, I hope, if your internet were to go down. And then you're like, hey, how come my internet doesn't work? Is something wrong with my computer? Is something wrong with my networking equipment? And you could just take a quick glance at your router and see a red light and know it's happening on the other side, like the cable modem or the cable company or your internet service provider. Now this keyboard and mouse are plugged into this little mini PC here. I fired it up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the network cable that you guys normally see me plug into computers, and I'm going to plug it into the back of this router as though it were a cable modem, and I'll plug it into one of these two blue ports. And in this computer here, with the white Ethernet cable that I just had laying around, we're going to plug that in to one of the four 2.5 gig ports here in the back. Doesn't matter which one. And then I'm going to turn it this way so you can see the front of it. And it should auto-negotiate an IP address and then apply an IP address over here. And then I'm going to go to that screen of this little mini PC so we can navigate the interface on this and see what it looks like and look for updates. Because it could have, because it's a brand new product, updates are probably going to be frequent as they enhance or polish certain features of a brand new product. So we want to be on the constant lookout for any new firmware. As the product ages, the firmware's releases should become less and less frequent. The router says hi. Still getting a reflection, aren't I? Come on now. Okay, so let me go over to HDMI input here. And that should be this desktop. It is, and it recognizes a brand new network, which makes sense. And I'm going to go full screen for me. It's already full screen for you guys at home. And let's just open up the browser and see what happens. So it's just working on the internet without any configuration. I was kind of hoping the TP-Link page would come up, but we're online and it's working, but we don't have the Wi-Fi set up. We don't have it all configured. And let's go ahead and do that now. So we'll go to, there's usually a web address for this. Let's take a look at the back of the router. Usually, if there's a website, they'll tell you what it is. It's got a default SSID written on the back of the router, but no password. It's TP-LinkWiFi.net. So we're going to go up here. We're going to type TP-LinkWiFi.net. And that should take us to this home page, and it does. And the first thing it wants us to do is create a password. So this is my password. By the way, I just do this for live videos. I don't actually leave my password to be, this is my password. It doesn't even like that. It must contain at least, oh, it's got to have numbers, letters, and symbols. Oh, that's great. Okay, well, And I'll do something else, and I won't say what it is out loud. Okay. And the passwords have to match. So apparently I typed it correctly on the bottom one, but not on the top. This is a very important step because if somebody can log into your router, then they can make changes to the settings. It can lock you out of your own network. Okay, they should match now. Select my time zone. I am in GM, well, I guess it's UTC -7, Arizona. Next. Tell us which port you're using for internet access. Like, doesn't it know that already? It's got one selected by default. Which one am I in? Am I in 1 or 2? Numbers are written right next. Oh, it's 1 or 3 is the option. 10 gig is, apparently you can't use either one. Well, yeah, you can. I don't know why it says combo port recommended. So they're recommending ports 1 or 2 for your internet modem to plug into. But you can use port 3. They just recommend 1 or 2. You can only pick one. And we are in port number 1. So that's fine. We'll hit next. What kind of connection? It's going to be dynamic. So that's next. That means everything's going to be decided on its own. Default MAC address is fine. Smart Connect, we've talked about this feature. It's where it will switch automatically between 2.5 and 5 gigahertz to any wireless device that you're using that supports 2.5 or 5. Older Wi-Fi devices may have a problem connecting or staying connecting if they're too old with Smart Connect turned on. So if you have old Wi-Fi devices, any router, whether it's ASUS or Netgear or TP-Link, the Smart Connect feature may cause older Wi-Fi devices to not stay connected or to have stability connection problems. So I'm going to go ahead and leave Smart Connect on. And what that does is it switches between 2.4 and 5 to each device that supports 2.5, 5 to whichever signal is better. So if you're walking around with a laptop or a tablet or a phone, it may switch as you walk around it. We call that roaming, and it just does that on its own. Otherwise, if you want to keep it fixed on 2.4 or keep a device fixed on 5, instead of letting the unit decide, then you would turn Smart Connect off. And of course, if you don't want to have both 2.5 and 5, you can disable the channels if you wanted to. Now, we'll leave all this defaults for the Wi-Fi settings, and I'm not going to use the Wi-Fi on it today. Now it's going to test our internet connection here to sort of self-configure. And the internet connection here is pathetic. That this internet connection, I think, is 30 megabits down and 3 megabits up. It's about the lowest tier the cable company offers. Patrick Russo wants to know if RoboForm would work for password on the router. Yes, yes, it will. MU-MIMO says you probably need to install an app on your phone. You don't have to, but yes, all modern routers from all the big manufacturers, Netgear, ASUS, TP-Link, do have apps to download, but they're not required, at least certainly not on this particular model. It's an option, and it can make accessing the router and configuring it much more convenient. I'm old school. I still prefer to do things by hand, but I'll put the app in after the fact when I'm done setting up the router. Just kind of dig around in the app and see if there's anything in there I find useful. Keep your router updated. Auto updates allow your router. Turn on auto update. When do you want to update your router? Between 3 and 5 in the morning? Sure, that sounds great. Next. So now I don't have to keep checking it for updates. It'll do that itself. And we've set the router up. We are done. So that's our summary. And because we've plugged a router into a router, we've got network address translation going into network address translation, which things get a little complicated. This has already sorted that out. So we're essentially going from this router is combined with my modem router combo. Okay. To fix issues with double network address translation. Okay, it's nice that they tell us that. We're not having those issues. This is really cool that you could print these QR codes out. And if somebody comes over to your house and you want them on your Wi-Fi, they only need to use the camera on their tablet or their smartphone to point at the QR code, and it'll automatically set them up on your Wi-Fi, and they don't have to type in or locate the SSID or type in the password exactly right. They just literally scan the QR code. Very clever. So you could print that QR code out on a piece of paper and hang it on the wall. It says, you want to join the guest network? Point the camera on your device at this QR code. And I'm going to skip this. It says we're all set. We can join the experience program. That's where it sends anonymous data back to TP-Link to, they don't care who you are or what you're doing with the device. They only want to know if the device is crashing or struggling. And then when it does, it sends the crash report anonymously to TP-Link so that they can collect these reports. And if they get a lot of reports of a particular crash that's occurring under a certain scenario, then they'll fix that with a firmware update without you having to call support. It just gets fixed automatically. I don't participate in that because unless they're paying me to help them improve their product, I'm not interested in sending them my data. Now, already it says a firmware update is available, and we definitely want that. If you've never updated the firmware on your router, you probably should look and see if a new firmware exists. If you get your router, if you're renting it from your internet service provider, they should be doing this for you automatically. It's nothing you need to worry about. But if you're providing your own router, it's up to you to make sure it's staying secure and up to date. The firmware updates are free, and every manufacturer of router has firmware updates. I've never seen a router not have one. And if it's been years since the last time you've looked, or maybe you've never looked at all, do keep in mind that when you do update the firmware, everybody on your network is going to get knocked off while it updates. So you might either want to let people know, hey, I'm updating the firmware, you're going to lose your connection for a couple minutes, or wait till everybody's in bed, do it late at night. This router will update its own firmware automatically between 3 and 5 in the morning as we set it to look every day, once a day, and I like that. So that takes pressure off of me to remember to go and look. The older the router is, the less likely a new firmware has come out recently. So if you have a 5-year-old router, whatever the latest firmware is that the manufacturer has on their support page, it's probably years old. And that's probably the last one it's ever going to be, but it still doesn't hurt you to go to the manufacturer's website, look up the model of router you have, and verify that the version of firmware you have matches the latest version the manufacturer offers. It is very important. So while we're waiting, I'll just take a look here in the chat. Marco says, greetings and salutations from Italy. Hello, Marco. Barry Klein says, that display in the router is the equivalent of RGB on a computer. It is, but it can be useful. Just as RGB could like glow red if your system's running hot as a way to let you know, to communicate that temperature status, you can use this front display to convey information that's useful, or you can turn it off altogether if you find it annoying. You could have it display the weather. You could have it, I could probably put my logo on the front of this router. So now I have to log in with the new firmware applied, which really didn't take very long. You notice it doesn't ask for a username, it just wants a password. I like that. TP Cloud Service, I'm not setting this up, so I'm going to say don't ask me again. This is kind of the overview of what's connected to it and how it's connected. And up here is all of the bells, whistles, and features and controls from the LAN settings and WAN settings. Over here are wireless settings, something called TWT. I don't know what that is, but if we hit the question mark, target wake time allows an 802.11ax router and client to negotiate their periods to transmit and receive data packets. Clients only wake up at TWT sessions and remain in sleep mode for the rest of the time, which significantly extends their battery life. Oh, yeah, okay, I don't need that. But interesting. And again, you're going to have it on TWT support on the client side of things. Both the router and the client have to be capable of doing that. Older Wi-Fi devices wouldn't benefit from this. And there's no scrolling down. Oh, yeah, there is. We can scroll down. Create a MLO network that is connected to your Wi-Fi. 7 clients can simultaneously send and receive data across different frequency bands, greatly improving the transmission rate and reliability. So this is a Wi-Fi 7 feature only, which would require a Wi-Fi 7 wireless card, of which none exist at the time of making this video. But that may be something I want to revisit in the future. We can enable up to 3 guest networks, one on the 2.4, one on the 5 gig, and one on the Wi-Fi 6E 6 gigahertz channel. And you can set it up with or without security, and whether or not you want it as a portal. So a portal is really a neat idea. What that does is it's like a hotel. As soon as they bring up internet, they connect to the Wi-Fi without a password. And then when they open up their browser, it takes them to a password page, just like a hotel. It says, what's the password for the hotel Wi-Fi? Or what is your, if you paid for it, what's your confirmation code? And when you enter the confirmation code on that website, it unlocks the computer to then use the internet, even though you're kind of using it, but you're only using it just for the portal. But if you've got devices that don't have screens that you want to connect to your guest Wi-Fi, like IoT, like a Nest thermostat, you would never be able to see the portal screen to put in the information. So in that case, you probably want it encrypted and set a password. But I'm going to leave everything as is. You can even have a separate network dedicated. Well, this is interesting that they've just solved that. If I read further down, you can create a dedicated wireless network to manage your Internet of Things devices together. A lot of people are concerned about security for, let's say, baby monitors or wireless security cameras. What you can do is isolate those devices onto their own wireless area where they cannot communicate with each other and they cannot communicate with your hardware, just in case, one of these companies in China makes a camera that spies on you or wants to infect your other equipment, or somebody hacks into the camera because the manufacturer did a poor job of security when they designed the camera, but hey, it was cheap on Amazon, so I bought it. AliExpress. Well, by isolating them on their own network, it gives them the internet access they need for you to utilize the device without giving the device access to your network. So I want to see this more, because traditionally what I would do is put all my Internet of Things onto the guest network. There's no reason they need to be on my main network. And the guest network by default does this. But that's quite interesting. I'm good with it. I like it. Over here, we've got something called Network Check. This is click to scan your security and network performance, which I'm not too worried about. And also, when we look at these other things, you'll notice there's no menus here on the left side. Not here and not here. But when I clicked on this one, we have a number of submenus like parental controls, quality of service, and something called more features. Something called Tether, whatever that is, as a free 30-day trial. We've got DDoS protection, malicious content filter, intrusion prevention system, and Internet of Things protection. Of course, usage analysis, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of good geeky stuff in there. Over here, the LED screen. Okay. It supports 3 LED display modes. You can choose to auto display slides, animations, or text on the LED screen appropriate to your needs. Easily create your own emojis. Up to 3,000 emojis can be created to show off your personality. You can autoplay your favorite animations, easily create your own animations, and adjust the play speed. So you could have like Pac-Man going across eating dots, like a big one, like a giant Pac-Man eating giant dots, moving off the screen, across the screen, and back off the other side of the screen. I don't know why you would, but you know, I could have my logo appear and spin around in circles. Yeah. Or we can put words on the screen, write anything you want to display on the LED screen, like reminders and greetings. And then I guess you have to do that through your phone. You cannot do that through this interface. That's what I'm gleaning from this. And that's its own little menu option. And then finally, well, this is all of the good stuff right over here at the end, the advanced section. And the people that buy this level of router are probably going to jump right into this section. This is the nitty gritty, down and dirty, give me all my settings and features and the technical stuff that intimidates a lot of average computer owners. So there's your standards, quick setup stuff, which we've more or less been through. And then we have more detailed wireless settings, USB settings, more with regards to network address forwarding, network address translation. HomeShield, more about parental controls, your network check, QoS service. I guess saying QoS service is like saying ATM machine. The M in ATM stands for machine, so it's like saying automatic teller machine. So when I just said QoS service, it's like quality of service. I'll just be a geek. All right, more features even still beyond that. I was there. More on security. You can set this up as a VPN client or a VPN server. You can set up profiles for clients that will use the VPN. And then you would set up your VPN server. You need to have the server, have the client. You could use services like NordVPN or any of those VPN services that you pay for your computer. You can put that service in the router so you don't run it on the computer anymore. And you just VPN all the traffic connected to your router if you want to. You can absolutely do that. Or you can do it on a per client basis. Or you can just have the software installed on your computer if it's just your computer you want to have on a VPN. But by putting it on the router, you can configure it so everything connected to your router, whether it's Internet of Things or the kids or Netflix, all goes through the VPN. It will likely slow down your internet connection. That's the price you're going to pay for that encryption and decryption that has to take place for all your traffic. And it will have an impact on the performance of the speed of your internet connection. But that's what that's for. There's information on IP version 6, which for the most part, I don't use it, IP version 6 for anything. It runs automatically in the background in some areas, and so I just leave that alone. Something called Smart Life Assistant. I don't know what this, so that's for Alexa and Google Assistant. There's the Easy Mesh. What Easy Mesh enables you to do is to connect another Easy Mesh compatible router, which would be TP-Link. Another TP-Link router, doesn't have to be the same make or model, that also supports Easy Mesh. You put these into a mesh mode where they work together to extend out your broadcast range. So if you're not getting enough range out of this router, if you've got areas of your home or your office that are dead spots or weak spots, you could set another TP-Link router that supports Easy Mesh up somewhere closer to where the dead zone is, but still within range of the main router. And then they work as a mesh system. Ideally, in the best case scenario, you'd have everything on the mesh would be the same for the sake of consistency and maintenance, although that would get expensive with this router. And you'd have to have a pretty big property for this router to not cover it in its entirety, or you've got a very bad location for the router. Wi-Fi signal broadcasts equally in all directions, up, down, left, right, forward, and backward. So if you want the best coverage in your building, you want to place any wireless router in the middle of the building. If you place the router towards the back of the building, you're broadcasting half of your signal outside and maybe even into the building across the street. If you place this router or any Wi-Fi router against a wall, against one side of the building, you're broadcasting half of your signals going outside of the building. So the best location for a Wi-Fi router is always, ideally, whenever possible, as close as you can get to the middle. And that way you can get the second floor, the basement, the far side of the left and the far side to the right, the far to the back and far to the front yard, the backyard. But again, it depends what the property is made of, how much other Wi-Fi signals you're competing with in your neighborhood or in your building, in the case of like an office complex where people are renting different office spaces and everybody's got their own router, or you live in an apartment. All of that's going to have an impact on your signal strength and quality. Finally, under system, this is where we can look for more firmware updates. If we want to check it ourselves, there's usually, on most routers made within the last 6 years, a button to automatically check where you don't have to manually go and look it up the way I described and recommended you guys do that for your older routers. Go look it up. You could just sign into your router and go to the advanced section or administrative section and check if there's a button where it'll look for you and then offer you the ability to upgrade if one is available. It makes life so much easier. If you've got the router all configured with port forwarding and a bunch of QoS settings and things like that, you can then back up the router's configuration to a very small file onto a flash drive, so that if you ever have to reset the router, you don't have to go through and reset all the settings back again. You just restore from your backup configuration file, and it puts all your settings back the way you've had them. This is the administration for changing password. You could enable password recovery if you want to. Whether or not you want to be able to do remote management, I leave all that stuff. Remote management is all off on my stuff. Nobody can break in if there's not a door for them to go through. If I make it easier for me to access, I'm making it easier for the bad guys to access. So if I'm going to do any administration to my router remotely, what I will do is I will remote into a computer I leave on in the building here, and then use that computer remotely to log into the router locally. I don't give outside access to routers. Just a security rule I follow here. There's our system logs, system diagnostics, time and language settings. Here's where we can reboot the router, or we can even schedule a reboot to happen. LED status, we can turn the LED off on the front. We can turn something called night mode, and that is you can set a period when the LEDs turn off automatically at a certain time. And that way, if you have it in your room and you go to bed and you want this off at 10 o'clock at night, the router stays on, but the lights go out, so it's not keeping you up at night. Then, of course, we've got using this as a wireless router, or you can just use it as an access point, which is really what we would do if you were plugging this into another router. You just set this up as an access point. And then finally, there's the About page and the option to join or not join the User Experience Improvement Program. So if you've changed your mind one way or the other, you can always change it back one click away. And that is the entirety of the configuration options in this router. That drives me crazy. Okay. Hey, there's Madi OL joining us in the chat. Contributes $10 in Super Chat. Thank you, Madi. Good to see you, my friend. We don't see you as much as we used to. Life gets busy, I imagine. Okay. So that's first impressions and some assumptions. I don't see anything being offered on this router I haven't seen on routers before it, except for the option of changing the logo of this thing on the screen here, which is just going through some kind of demo, I guess, of icons you can display. And I guess I'm going to have to download the app to play with that, but maybe I can put my spinning logo on there, or maybe just a straight image of my logo. I don't know. I'll play with it. It's a toy. I could just have it display the weather, but it's Arizona, so it's clear skies, 100 degrees or hotter, dry, low humidity, and it's the same more or less 50 weeks out of the year. So weather's not that beneficial to me unless I want the weather of where I go in Michigan and I want to be jealous of how much nicer the weather is there. But that's really up to your imagination and how you want to use it. If you want to use it as fluff or you want to use it as an actual tool to convey information, that's up to you, or you can shut it off entirely. So is there anything about this router that you want to know? I'll see if I can answer the question. I don't know. If you've asked anything prior, I've not seen it. You'll need to ask your question again. I am taking questions now. But I will tell you, my impression of this right now is it's better than I thought it was going to be. I was prepared for another experience similar to that TP-Link Wi-Fi 6E spider router. And there's so much about that I didn't like. I don't have those concerns here. I'm liking everything I'm seeing here. And I still am looking forward to moving ahead with pulling the RAX 120 out, which has been here 4 years, I think. That's a good lifespan for a router. I know many of you probably have a router that's over 4 years old. For me, 4 years is about right to change the router out for somebody like me. Can I have the router display temps from Brazil? I'm sure you can. Yeah, and I'll have to put the app on the phone, free download. I'll get it out of the Google Play Store, or if you have an iPhone, you'll get it out of the Apple Store. Duncan says that is a big router. It really isn't, though. Honestly, it's smaller than the other 2 Wi-Fi 6E routers that I looked at. It's also lighter. It's not as heavy. And I expect my range should be, at a very minimum, as good as the ranges I have now. And ideally, should be better range than I have now. Because the Netgear Nighthawk, the RAX 120 I use now, has like the bat wings. And the antennas are inside of the wings. With this, the antennas are on each side here against the plastic. There's no reason you would ever need to open this router up. There's nothing upgradable or user serviceable in it. You're not going to be adding any RAM or overclocking it. So I don't see any reason to open this router up. I also don't want to open it because if I don't like it, I want to be able to return it, and I don't want to jeopardize potentially my ability to return it. Right now, I'm really digging this router. So I really don't think I'm going to return it. I think this is going to be my new router. But I won't know until I actually put it in use. I'm going to upgrade my Synology NAS using a USB 2.5 gig network dongle, because the Synology NAS doesn't support 2.5 gig. And there's a nice little GitHub group that have developed drivers so that you can get 2.5 gig out of your Synology, which I've done, and it works great. And I'm going to do it again in a future video with a different Synology, because once you've done it, it's kind of difficult to do it again. So I'll take a different Synology and I'm going to upgrade its operating system, which you have to do manually right now, to 7.2. And I'll show you how you download it and apply it. And also on that video, I will show you how we're going to upgrade to 2.5 gig so I can get that 350 or 303 megabits per second data transfer from another wired connection that'll be wired into the 2.5 gig ports here on the back. All the Wi-Fi 6E cables, Cat 6, Wi-Fi cables, Carey, really? The Cat 6E cables that I have should transmit 2.5 gig just fine. What about a speed range test? Well, the speed range test isn't really an accurate way to evaluate a router because the speed and range that I get in my environment with the network traffic around me and the age of the devices and number of devices that I have combined with the materials that this structure is made from will give this router different performance characteristics no matter where it's placed. So there's really not much information for you to benefit from. When you watch somebody do a range test, it's pretty pointless for you. That's really only affecting them. Again, the kind of Wi-Fi devices they're connecting, the number of Wi-Fi devices they're connecting, what the building and structure is made out of, and other items in the building that might be causing network traffic or network noise, like in a machine shop. Like, let's say we set up a wireless router in a machine shop with all those electric motors. Oh man, that is a real tough battle to get through. Or let's say we're setting this up in an apartment and everybody's got Wi-Fi at different channels and different SSIDs come up. When you look at your list, it's right. Or you're in a crowded area. Or maybe you live in a rural area. Maybe you live in a house that was built in the 1800s. Those houses can be very difficult to get signals through the walls. Maybe you live in an area that you're in the middle of a rural area, but the result of that is you typically don't get high-speed internet because the infrastructure doesn't justify the cost of putting it in. So you'd have Starlink or something like that, which you can pair with this. So essentially what I'm trying to tell you is there is no Wi-Fi speed test that anybody can ever show you or a range test that will be at all meaningful to you, because how you use it, what you're connecting to it, where you are placing it, and in what environment, and what other variables exist that are unique only to you and nobody else on the planet are going to determine what the range and performance are for you and only you. So if I show you range and performance, it doesn't tell you anything helpful unless you're planning to move in with me. I'm telling you, when people do that here on YouTube and online and they're like, well, we did a range test, that's in their environment. And unless you have the exact same environment, including the same building, the same size, the same location of the router, and the same equipment that you're connecting to it with nothing more and nothing less, then and only then should you expect to get similar results. So somebody could get amazing range, the best range they've ever seen in their life, and say, what an amazing router. I've never seen this kind of range before. Then you buy that router and it's not giving you any better range than the router you had. Does that mean you were provided wrong information? No, you were provided information that was based on the environment the unit was in, how it was being used, and the number of connections that unit was taking on at the same time. And, is it connecting a bunch of old Wi-Fi devices? Is it battling a bunch of other Wi-Fi signals from nearby neighbors? So many variables here that performance and range tests that you see, the best you can do, honestly, is read what the manufacturer says. So every manufacturer of router tells you the best the router can do. Here's how many square feet. Here's what your range is, and here's what your performance is. You're never going to do better than that. You will never do better than that. All right? So the manufacturers are already giving you that information. They're already telling you this is what the router can do. So it's no point in me testing range or performance because that won't benefit you at all. But what I will do is I'm going to hook this up and I'm going to live with it every day. It's going to be the router I rely on. I'm going to be transferring files to my NAS, and I'm going to be doing things wirelessly. And I'm going to see if the router's crashing. I'm going to see if I have to reboot it on a regular basis. I'm going to see if it's not responsive. I'm going to see if things feel faster for some reason. But that's all unique to me. And then I'm going to share that experience with you in a part 2 follow-up to this. But I will tell you, I'm going to emphasize this as much as I can. Anything regarding performance or range is absolutely pointless beyond what the manufacturer tells you on the product page about their product, which is, this is the best. If everything is great, if all the conditions are ideal, then this is what you can get out of it maximum. You will never do better than that. Never. So how it operates for you, you'll have to try it and see. So that's why I don't do that. It's very misleading to tell people, oh, this router's got the best range of any router. That's in my environment under the circumstances that I'm using it. Let me grab a cold Gatorade here and we'll look to see if you have questions, other questions that I can answer or explain why they're not answerable to any benefit like that. And you set it up with an existing TP-Link mesh system. If the TP-Link mesh system supports Easy Mesh, then the answer is yes. You have to see if your current router from TP-Link supports Easy Mesh. It's possible that when you bought your TP-Link router, whether it's a mesh router or not, that Easy Mesh wasn't available, but after a firmware update that may have come out months or years after you bought the router, it's possible through a firmware update that then it becomes Easy Mesh compatible. So what you would do is you would go to TP-Link's website. In fact, we can do that together. Let me bring up, you know what? Let's just go back to the HDMI input here. And I have to go full screen for me. And all you have to do to figure out if your router, because we're not going to sit here and list every TP-Link router, but if you go TP-Link Easy Mesh router, then here's a website, tplink.com, Easy Mesh compatible devices. You click on that, and it goes through what Easy Mesh is, and one-click settings, there's a video setup guide. There should be a list of compatible devices here. But it was right in here. Traditional router with an extender or Easy Mesh router with range extender. Check all Easy Mesh compatible devices. So you would look and see if your TP-Link router you have now is, or the range extender from TP-Link, or the power line adapter you have for TP-Link. Only these models have Easy Mesh. And where you see it says the word planned, this is the Wi-Fi 6E router I sent back because I had it for nearly a month and there was never a firmware update released. And there still isn't, apparently. It still says planned, meaning TP-Link hasn't gotten around to it yet. But they plan to eventually, with no commitment on when, release a firmware update that will enable this router to become Easy Mesh capable. So where you see the word planned, that means not yet. Even the AX11000 is planned. If you buy that router today, it cannot do that today. But they're promising you at some point in the future, a firmware update will enable it. This router is not out yet. I was very curious about this router. It kind of looks like a spaceship from Star Wars. Range extenders I don't use. I don't like range extenders. But if they're used in a mesh scenario, that changes things. Power line adapters as part of a mesh, I never thought of that before. But you'll see none of them currently support Easy Mesh. But there, it is planned, so a firmware update to these adapters will eventually one day come out and be free. And it's up to you to go and get it and update it. And there's a few more. You see it says show 12 more range extenders. And then under routers, there are 21 TP-Link routers in total that either support Easy Mesh or it is planned in a firmware release at some point in the future Is the future near or far? They don't say. Okay. Let me look back through. If other brands would fully support Easy Mesh, that would be nice and convenient. So every brand has their own definition of how they define what mesh is. And it's a proprietary standard. So ASUS has their own mesh system that's only compatible with ASUS. TP-Link has their own mesh system that's only compatible with TP-Link. TP-Link's mesh system will not work with ASUS's mesh system, and Netgear doesn't even have one. They don't have a Wi-Fi router that's also mesh. They're the only big networking company that doesn't do it. Netgear will either sell you a mesh router or a Wi-Fi router, but they don't sell a Wi-Fi router that can do mesh. ASUS does, and TP-Link does. Netgear seems like they're getting worse, in my opinion. You know, they're shut down. ReadyCloud, I think that shuts down on July 1st. Yeah, I'm starting to lose my love affair with Netgear is quickly becoming a love affair with TP-Link, because what TP-Link does offer on some of their routers is an entirely different open mesh system. And it's called One Mesh. So if we go back over here, let's go full screen. Let's do a search for, right here, let's search for One Mesh. Now, what's cool about One Mesh is that you don't have to use the same manufacturer. You can take any One Mesh capable piece of networking equipment and mesh it to another One Mesh capable networking piece of equipment. So TP-Link is the only manufacturer that I'm aware of that offers One Mesh. Wouldn't that be great if ASUS adopted it as well? So One Mesh and Easy Mesh are two different and incompatible mesh systems, which is ironic because One Mesh is supposed to be one mesh for all, regardless of the manufacturer. But if the manufacturers don't participate in it because they don't have to, I was looking for the explanation here. Unlike a Deco mesh network, a One Mesh router acts as the management. Is that what I want? Oh, it's not One Mesh. Is it Easy Mesh? I think I'm getting my names all confused, guys. Wi-Fi certified Easy Mesh brings a standards-based approach to Wi-Fi networks that utilize multiple access points, and they can be interoperable between manufacturers. So my bad, I have confused all of these terms. It's Easy Mesh. So this is the explanation of Easy Mesh from the Wi-Fi Alliance. These are the ones who come up with all the Wi-Fi standards. And it's been, this standard has been out for a couple of years. And TP-Link, as far as I know, is the only manufacturer that's supporting it on some of their routers. Because you have One Mesh doesn't mean you get Easy Mesh. They're two different mesh systems. So a TP-Link router may support one and not the other. Don't confuse them. Easy Mesh Wiki. That's probably what I was looking for. What is the function of Easy Mesh? It's a standard-based approach. Okay, that's basically what we read. It's a standard so that you can utilize different manufacturers to create your own unique mesh. So wouldn't it be great if Netgear and ASUS participated, and I could have a Netgear router in one room, an ASUS router on a different floor, for example, and a TP-Link router and the opposite side of the house, and then put them all in mesh mode so they all communicate and be a signal, very strong signal throughout the entire building, no matter where I go, and that automatically passes the signal of the wireless device that I'm connected with, like my tablet or my phone, as I walk around the building. It seamlessly roams me from one point to the other without me even noticing. And that could be the equipment I currently have. So I could use the Netgear router I have already, or the Asus router I have already, but none of them support Easy Mesh, only TP-Link does. But boy, wouldn't that be nice if these manufacturers would get on board? But like I said, Netgear doesn't even offer a mesh option on their Wi-Fi routers. You have to buy a mesh system or you get no mesh as far as Netgear is concerned. And so Netgear is losing favor as far as I'm concerned from my perspective. They're no longer a value proposition they used to be when many Asus routers and many TP-Link routers have their own mesh system where they can communicate with Wi-Fi extenders and power link adapters and create your own mesh without buying a mesh system. What a mesh. Arnold Albert says TP-Link's always been a budget brand, providing competition for other brands while providing reliable and efficient services through their devices. Agreed, yeah. And this is only $599 and first to market. I don't see a Wi-Fi 7 router from Asus on the market yet, and I don't see one from Netgear on the market yet. So for the budget brand, you got to think about what you're saying. Budget brands aren't usually marketplace leaders in technology. They usually come along after the technology's matured and has become cheaper and offer a cheaper alternative to existing infrastructure. But what TP-Link is doing, at least in this case, is they're first out the gate and they're setting the pace for all the other manufacturers of consumer-based routers to follow behind them. Not too bad for a budget brand. And I wouldn't call $599 budget. However, when other manufacturers come out with their Wi-Fi 7 routers, like Netgear and Asus, or Ubiquiti, suddenly this may appear to be budget. It doesn't to me right now because there's really nothing to compare it to, and it's pretty expensive. But expensive compared to what? Expensive compared to other routers in general. But yes, they are known for being a budget brand, but well, a lot of times that carries a bad connotation of not being as good. In many cases, they're better, in my experience. I've recommended TP-Link routers generally to average consumers and small businesses that are not requiring a lot of heavy technical control over the router. I will say, however, this router has all of that, but a lot of the TP-Link routers are fairly limited in what you can do with them. And that's true also with mesh systems in general. Most mesh systems, you can't really make many changes because the mesh system is so complex. They're like, you're going to screw this up, so we're going to automate it and not give you the option of screwing it up. And that's almost universal across all mesh systems. This is not in mesh mode, however, and so this is, as a router, seems to have all the same functionality as my Netgear Nighthawk router, and even more so with the IoT and protection stuff that they offer. Chris Johnson said he's waiting on DOCSIS 4 implementation before I change my modem and router, unless, of course, something catastrophic happens. No, it's just, I'm waiting on DOCSIS 12, but I'll use whatever DOCSIS is available today. Shane Perkins says the Asus NAS store should scream. Well, no. And the reason I say no is because 2.5 gigabit networking is completely saturated, and I mean completely saturated at 300 and some odd megabytes per second. And I'll tell you what that is once I get it all set up. I'll be able to tell you confidently. And that a Zeus store router could, in theory, saturate a 10 gigabit per second. In fact, my Netgear Synology with 2 mechanical drives in it, the Iron Wolves that I have in there, can totally saturate 2.5 gig. It wouldn't matter if they were plugged into this or they were plugged into an $80 2.5 gig switch. The performance will not change. And of course, my wireless devices, well, they're not going to even get close to transmitting data at the speed of 2.5 gig. And then, of course, there's 5 gig in the middle. There's 2.5, there's 5, and there's 10. And the more money you want to spend. But the limitation of performance is bottlenecked by that network cable. And so that ASUS Store router, that ASUS Store Flash Store 6 NAS device will not transfer the data any faster than my Synology, whether it's on a 1 gig network or a 2.5 gig, it's going to saturate it either way. So yeah, it's limitations in the network. Barry reminds me I was going to check to see if the display would change on the front if it lost internet. Yeah, I'm going to unplug the internet. Thank you for reminding me. So let's pretend our cable modem just went offline by unplugging it. Oh, and look, we get an exclamation point. So once again, if I'm in the middle of working on something and my internet goes down, I don't know, is it my computer? Is it my switch? Is it my router? Is it my modem? Is it on my side? Is it on the cable provider side? Is it just me, or did it go down for all my neighbors? The very first thing I'm going to do, and it's the very first thing I always do, is go look at the router. But usually you have a little light on the router that with a symbol that's like a globe that tells you you're online. And if that light is lit up and it's green, everything's good, or blue or whatever. If the light is lit up, it's good. If the light is out or the light is red over that little globe icon, that means there's no communication out to the internet. And those lights can be very small, and there's a whole bunch of lights on the front of most routers, and I'm not sure which light is for which thing, and then I got to get my glasses and a flashlight because the router's tucked in a dark corner, and I got to look and see. But here, this is real obvious. And even on the TP-Link mesh system, they'll have a light on the top of each tower, and that light is normally green, I think. But if I happen to be walking by and I see the little light on top of the tower is red, I know that it's not on my side. That means the internet is down for the building. So it's a very quick way to know, should I start diagnosing my computer? Should I start diagnosing my home network? Or is this something outside of the building that I can't fix and I shouldn't try and fix it because all I'm going to do is break things that are not broken? I'm going to break them, trying to fix something that doesn't need to be fixed. And this tells me that. This tells me either my cable modem needs to be unplugged and then plugged back in again to reset. And if that doesn't change anything, then the next step is either to be patient and wait, or to pick up the phone and call your internet service provider and say, hey, my internet's out, what's up? If they want you to verify that it's not your computer, you just tell them, I can see all the lights are out on the cable modem, or on my router, it's signifying that there's no signal. Now, usually your internet service provider doesn't care about your router unless you're renting it from them. They're going to tell you plug something directly into the back of the modem and see if your internet comes back up. Right? And you could say, okay, the lights on the front of the modem aren't lighting up. Normally I get a bunch of lights, and now I just have a power light and then a blinking light that like it's trying to connect and nothing's happening. Can you tell me if there's an outage in my area? And most of the time, in my experience, once they look it up, they're like, yeah, they're doing some work over in your area. Anyway, let's plug this back in, back where it was, and then it'll reassign an IP address back over to it, and then we should see that exclamation point change. And that usually takes a minute. So whenever you have to reboot things, you need to give it a couple minutes to fire back up, or in this case, to renegotiate with the other router to be reassigned an IP address. There it goes, and it's happy again. Yeah, thank you for reminding me about that. Hey, Marvin Jameson's been a member for 12 months. Right on, Marvin. Marvin also contributed $20 in Super Chat. I just saw that. Thank you so much, Marvin. I hope you're doing well, my friend. Does the USB support 5 gig or 10 gig speed? Old man 55 wants to know. You know what? That is a fair question. Let's take a look at the Amazon page. And let's see, to my video capture. And this should tell us somewhere in the specifications here. No reviews on Amazon either. Well, maybe I'll leave a review on there once I've had some time to play with it. I don't see it really talking about that USB 3 port. However, let's do this. Let's go to this one over here. And let's type in what is USB speed on BE800 TP-Link. It says it's USB 3.0. It doesn't say it's 3.1 or 3.2. So that's the router. Okay, that's the Amazon page. Shane Perkins says with the 10 gig LAN support that the ASUS FlashStore 12 has, along with 10 gig to this, that the ASUS store should scream. Well, no, I don't think so. And the reason, again, is because you basically only have the one 10 gig port, right? So you're only going to plug in one 10 gig device. Well, I guess there are two 10 gig ports though, aren't there? As long as you're not using one of the 10 gig ports for your internet, because you'd have to have 10 gig on the receiving side, right, of the client side, and then 10 gig on the NAS device. So you'd need, at a very minimum, two 10 gig Ethernet ports. And then it would scream between those two devices only, and it would run the same speed for everybody else. So, but you could do that, like if you wanted to make that investment into a 10 gig switch. Yeah. So what is, tell you what, let's go to TP-Link BE900 product page. This looks exactly like what we looked at Amazon. This is the same stuff. More on HomeShield and HomeShield Pro. And clients and server, easy setup, protect your children, easy firmware upgrades, new connection notifications. Just says USB 3.0. It's not telling us the speed of that. There's all your fine print. there's probably, we go to support. Do we have more than one hardware version? Wow, there's a version 1 and a 1.6. Which one do we have? Just came out. How can they have two different hardware versions already? Look on the sticker on the back of the unit. It should tell us our hardware version. Whoops. It says version 1.0. Isn't that interesting? So I wonder what the difference is with 1.6. We're version 1. Frequently asked questions. Download center. Support videos. Firmware apps. What are the apps? TP-Link Tether provides the easiest way to access and manage your network. Oh, I've used TP-Link Tether before. I showed that when I was reviewing the other, the Wi-Fi 6E TP-Link router that I sent back. Manual, here's what we need. User guide, quick installation. I want the user guide. That should give us what we're looking for. Let's Control F. No, it's a search up here we can use. Search for USB. Chapter 10, page 53. Feel free to download the PDF manual. Everybody can download it. It's free to download and look through it if you want to learn more of the details of this router. I will go through it when I have some time to sit down, but I will first get this router set up and plugged in and configured, set up on my Wi-Fi. I'm going to put the same Wi-Fi name and password that I'm using on the Netgear router. So none of my Wi-Fi devices will need to be reconfigured. They'll just automatically connect to this router instead of the other one, as long as I have the other one turned off. And it should be a plug and play situation there. So yeah, it just says USB 3, which is probably 5 gigabits per second. That's the safest thing to guess. Which is kind of a shame. You'd think it'd be USB 3.2. Well, this might be a question worthy of asking technical support. You would think that that information, what speed the USB runs at, given the level this router is at, that information would be provided conspicuously, that they wouldn't hide it, and that they would, make sure to list it as part of the statistics of the hardware, right? Whether it's the processor frequency, the the bandwidth it's available, the ports that are available. It's why it seems like they kind of dropped the ball there. I'm not seeing anything regarding the performance of the USB other than it says USB 3.0 with no definition of that being truly 3.0. Yeah, that's interesting. I guess I'll have to ask support. But it looks like 5 gigabits per second if I had to take a guess. Interesting. Good question. Just to check, since this is not available at amazon.co.uk, would a US version work in UK, maybe with a different Mickey Mouse power socket plug? Most of these devices are auto switching for standards, and they simply just change the cable for the region. But I don't know the answer to that question. So that's another good question we can ask the folks at TP-Link if this will auto switch. Do not know the answer to that one. Old Man 55 said, my 7-year-old PC has USB 3.1 Gen 2. I thought by now Gen 2 would be standard. I would think they would have put USB 4 on this, honestly, given that it's such a flagship product. But there is a model above this that's not out yet, the BE900. Maybe that'll come equipped. I don't know. Not sure. And that's not something they can fix with a firmware update. That's a physical chip on the board. So whatever USB it comes with is what you're going to get. Garfield says half of that router is well above my pay grade. Yeah, well, it's probably not the right router for you anyway. Probably, even if you could afford it, would have no use or benefit to having it. Usually one thing's related to the other. This is a pretty high-end product. It's a pretty exclusive product for a very niche type of consumer or purchaser. This isn't your everyday average ordinary router that most people could afford or would even benefit from having, to be honest. Not yet. By the time that happens, Wi-Fi 10 or 12 will be out. And suddenly these expensive features will become standard in the entry levels. And, you know, as time marches on and the technology continues to evolve, if you're going to get the latest and greatest technology, you're going to be the first with the new features, first with the new problems. You're going to pay the highest price tag. And generally, at least when it comes to computer hardware, just getting one fast thing isn't enough. I can't just go buy a Gen 5 NVMe drive and plug it in to my computer from 4 years ago. It's not going to run any faster than the Gen 3 it's capable of. So I'd have to get a motherboard that would support the Gen 5 solid state drive. But to do that, my DDR4 RAM probably, maybe, isn't going to work, and I'm going to need DDR5. And that CPU isn't going to work, so I'm going to need a new CPU. So the CPU has to be fast enough and capable. The motherboard has to be fast enough and capable. The RAM has to be fast enough and capable. And with the solid state drive also being fast enough and capable, then everything can run at peak performance. We don't normally just get super fast tires and put them on a really old, slow car and think now our car is going to go faster. So it's all connected together. So if you have a bunch of old equipment and you buy this router and plug it in, it will likely not benefit you at all. Zero. Maybe you'll get better range, and that'll be about the extent of it. So it's definitely not a product for everybody. All houses download the data specs. I don't think it was a download. It was either the user manual or the easy setup guide. That's all I saw. But we could Google it. We could go back over to the mini PC here, and let's see. Have anything that says specifications? Nothing says product overview. There's a data sheet. We could look at the data sheet. This is pretty close to the specifications that we're going to get. Just says USB 3.0 port. It's all the same information we've already read. That's on the Amazon page. Here, specs right here. Hardware, USB 3.0. What are you going to do? How about physical specifications? FCC data, radio frequency, sensitivity, reception sensitivity, operating temperature. They're just not offering us that. It's a good idea. You'd think if it was going to be anywhere, it would have been in here, but for some reason they have omitted that. They don't even talk about it. Just USB 3.0, which I guess is whatever that's defined as, which is, I think, is it 5 gigabits per second? Alash says USB 3.0 is maximum 5 gigabits per second. Okay, so I could write into TP-Link support and say a couple questions. Will this power adapter auto sense 220 volts? If I just get a different plug, can I take this to Europe? And secondly, what is the data throughput of the USB 3.0? They're probably going to tell me, if I had to guess, this probably does auto switch, but I don't, I'm guessing. And they're probably going to tell me it's 5 gigabits per second. But I'd like to know for sure. Okay, were there any other questions I can make an attempt to answer? There's a couple good ones there that are going to require asking the company. What are your thoughts on using the DFS channels for Wi-Fi? What do you mean by the DFS channels? I don't know what you're referring to. Dynamic frequency selection, which is a function of using 5 gigahertz. So what I'm saying about DFS is usually it's those high frequency, the 5 and the 6 gigahertz. Those are really there as a means to cut through all. If you've got a lot of 2.4 gigahertz network traffic, or you've got a lot of 5 gigahertz network traffic, there's a lot of Wi-Fi devices around you, then using the DFS channels would benefit you because you'd be putting yourself onto a different channel than everybody else, so it's not as crowded. So if that's your scenario, then yes. If it's not your scenario, then no. I haven't heard it called DFS before. That's a new phrasing. Usually referring to it as the type of Wi-Fi that it is. So it's Wi-Fi 6, 6E, Wi-Fi 7, or the band itself. So you would just want to use specific channels yourself. If you're that kind of person, the router is going to auto set up what's best in your environment. But if you think you can set it up better yourself, have at it. And again, to justify that would be, you'd have to be in a pretty busy area with 2.4 gigahertz traffic and 5 gigahertz traffic to justify that need. That's a pretty unique scenario, but yeah, so yes and no. Depends on your needs and depends on your environment. Not a one size fits all answer for that. Can it run Doom? Don't know, don't care. What mesh devices can you use with this router? We've already covered that. So if you rewind the video back, we went all through the mesh devices that can be used. We've already covered that. What tools or apps do you recommend for measuring Wi-Fi signal strength around the house? I don't recommend any tools. So many people are caught up on letting machines do the thinking for them. It never occurs to them to think for themselves. That's my personal opinion on the matter. When you have a Wi-Fi device, if it's your phone, a tablet, a laptop, you're going to have a signal strength that appears. That's the tool I use, is looking at the signal strength of the device. Because you have to understand that when you're dealing with a Wi-Fi signal, it's not necessarily the router's issue, but rather the device that you're connecting with on the other side. So for example, if I have a bullhorn and I shout into the bullhorn, "Can you hear me?" And you're way at the other end of a field. You say, yeah. Because you don't have a bullhorn, I can't hear you back. That doesn't mean you have to tweak anything on my side. That's on your side. So when it comes to measuring signal strength and Wi-Fi signal performance, that's going to be told to me by the device, and I will see it consistently if it's not a device issue. So in other words, if I'm only connecting one Wi-Fi device, and it's only that one device that I have to check the Wi-Fi signal against, I don't really have any way to know if it's on the router that can be improved or if it's on the device. I would need a second device and a third device, put them in the same area and connect to the same router and see if they give me the exact same signal strength or if they give me completely different results. If they give me different results, that tells me it's on the client side, it's not on the router side. So that's why, using these tools for the most part is a complete waste of time. There are exceptions. However, common sense should always prevail, and no specialty tool, except in some exceptions, there's always exceptions. You don't need a Wi-Fi analyzer. You don't need any special tools. You need to use your brain. You need to use common sense, and you need to figure out, hey, maybe this 10-year-old device is the problem with the signal, not the new flagship router. When you turn these routers on, they're going to self-configure. They auto-configure to the right channel. Now, TP-Link has a free utility that you can download that will look at your area and tell you what are the best channels for you to be on. That's completely free. But those channels you should already be on because the router should have already selected them. And you should know that as your neighbors add equipment or turn things on or off, that you could run that test 3 times throughout the day and get 3 entirely different best channels depending on what items are being turned on around the homes or other apartments that you're surrounding you. It's not like things are on and they never change. They can change daily, hourly, weekly, monthly. You don't know what other people are doing and when they're activating new equipment, or maybe my neighbor bought a car and that car has a hotspot in it. And you can imagine my frustration when my Wi-Fi network suddenly goes terror. It's normally fine, never had a problem, ever, never had a problem. And all of a sudden, I get this weird problem, and I'm looking at the equipment, everything's fine. That's weird. And then when my neighbor shuts his car off or drives his car away out of range, my Wi-Fi is fine again. So apparently his car, when he's turning the car on and he's across the street, if he's like got the car on, sitting in his car, idling in the driveway, talking on the phone, my signal goes down into the tubes because he's conflicting on the same channel as I am. And then when he shuts the car off or he drives away, then I don't have the channel conflict anymore. That was not an easy thing for me to figure out, and there's no Wi-Fi tool that was going to point me into the solution for this. But eventually I was able to put it together and noticed every time that he arrived in his new car or that he started his new car and he was leaving, he was getting on the same channel as me. So once I realized that, I just went into the router and changed the channel. And I used, like the TP-Link, it'll tell you what are the good channels. And ideally, the best time to run that tool is when you think you're having a Wi-Fi problem. Don't wait an hour later, because that car, for example, isn't going to be there an hour later. So then I'm going to look and it's not going to see any issues. It's going to say the channel you're on is fine. There's no reason to change it. That's why I'm not a big fan of these tools. I'd rather just use my brain. At price, it should be a channel monger. Well, the Federal Communications Commission dictates rules that every manufacturer has to follow with regards to accepting interference. And so, what's to stop your neighbor from turning around and, let's say it's a channel monger. Now your neighbor's Wi-Fi is having problems. So they then spend some money and up their game. And now it's a who's going to spend more money competition. It's not about having a channel monger. It's just about picking the best performing channel for you. And it's subject to change based on how close your neighbors are to you and how technical they are, the kind of equipment. They might just be somebody who just got a rental from the internet service provider, or they could be a geek like me and they're just putting Wi-Fi everywhere. So. New Mide says channels don't really matter unless for gaming. No, that's not true at all. They usually say the best channels are 1, 6, and 11. Well, that's only on the 2.4 gigahertz. You've got a lot bigger channel selection on the 5 gigahertz channels as well on the 6 gigahertz channels. They're all entirely different depending on which band we're talking about. You're fixated on only the 2.4 gig band and you're fixated on gaming. But I can assure you, it gets way more serious than gaming when there's Wi-Fi interference in a business. If I'm live streaming and I'm using Wi-Fi to live stream and my Wi-Fi signal goes, that affects my ability to communicate with you, and I'm not gaming here. So no, you've way oversimplified that, and you've not considered the other bands. Chris Garrett said that router reminds me of an old Dell XPS from like 2007. Yeah, shrunken down. Daniel says, I like that you could put the date and time on this unit on the LED screen. Yeah, I think it'd look cool with my logo back here on there. I'm going to try and figure that out just for fun. All right, it's little after 3, about 20 after 3 o'clock in the afternoon here in Phoenix. So we've been on for 2 hours and 20 minutes. And I think that's a good place to wrap it up. I'm going to configure this router the way I want it configured. I'm going to then replace my Netgear router with this router, and I'm going to start using this router and only this router and see what it's like to live with day to day. See if I notice any range improvements or performance improvements. I don't think I will because I don't have any range issues with the router I have now. So if this is extending that range even further, I won't even know because I don't have any range problems. With regards to, does it get warm? It's lukewarm, but it's not as hot as that other TP-Link. That thing got really, really hot. I didn't like that. I also don't need to add more heat to the inside of my house when it's already over 100 degrees Fahrenheit outside and I've got the air conditioner blasting. I don't need a little heat generation device in the corner. So that was another reason I sent that back. If I lived in a cold climate and that's extra heat, I'll take it, but I didn't need that in my life. So far, this is operating much more along what I would expect it to do, temperature-wise, how it feels. Remember, I'm going off how things feel. Too many people in the world today, in my opinion, are too busy looking at and believing and trusting in numbers they're seeing on a screen. I don't live my life believing what machines tell me, and I never will. Machines are wrong all the time, and the machines can only know what we tell them. That's their problem. So if we never told it to the machine, or we never instructed the machine properly, then the machine's going to kick back what we call garbage in, garbage out. It's going to kick garbage back out. So because I'm not a machine and I have the freedom of thought and intelligence and common sense, I don't look to tools to replace me as a human being, because they will never, ever exercise the kind of judgment against themselves that they were instructed on how to do by another human being, that compared to what I can do and what my expectations are and how things feel. Computers can't feel. Virtual reality is numb. Try eating a virtual sandwich or drink some virtual water and let me know if that satisfies your hunger and your thirst. It's fake. It's pretend. It's virtual. It's numb. It is without feeling. So I think this is becoming a very important thing to remind people about, that, well, the machines can do work on our behalf. When it comes to determining performance, range, or even trying to figure out and diagnose something that's wrong, there is no better tool than your brain, period. And I don't think that's going to change in my lifetime. So that's my perspective on that subject. And it's why I've had a career over 30 years in the industry. And I'm not just looking at numbers coming from a screen. A lot of times when I'm fixing a problem for a customer, it's fixing it so that it feels the way it's supposed to feel. Does that computer respond in a way that I expect it to? Given what processor that computer has and how much RAM and what software is running and knowing what that software typically does, is that computer now behaving acceptably to what I expect it to? There is no piece of software that can answer that for me. It can be part of the information that I collect to get me to that final answer. But overall, what I do is make it feel right. Dr. Feelgood. I want to make sure that router, when I'm sending requests out to the internet or downloading files, that it's feeling the way it's supposed to feel or better. And there is no piece of software that can tell me how it feels. And that's why I do what I do. And that's why not everybody does. Some people aren't in tune with how things feel. Most people are, though. Most people, if you sit them down in front of a tuned up computer and a computer that's not tuned up, and you ask them, does one computer seem faster to you? Don't run any benchmarks, don't look at any numbers. Just click the mouse and do the things you normally do. Do you have a preference for one computer over the other? And quite often, if there's a difference in performance between the computers, and without running any benchmarks, the human being is fully capable of explaining to you, yes, this computer feels better to me. It's more responsive. It feels like it's faster. But that could be an illusion. That computer could just have a lot of cached files and it can completely fool the end user. But that's okay. Because as long as the end user feels that it's faster, it doesn't matter why. That's irrelevant. You know, it's like you're chasing facts over, it's facts over feelings. So in certain cases, when we're discussing science and math and history, we're talking about facts. But when we're talking about things like performance, especially as it pertains to the routers and computers and storage and all this other stuff, I don't care how many frames per second your computer says it's putting out. I care about how does it feel to play that game or to watch that movie. You can say it's 8K and 120 frames per second, but does it look or feel any different than 4K at 30 frames a second? And if you can't see the difference between them, then why are you spending the money and why are you chasing the benchmarks? It doesn't make any sense to me. And no customer has ever offered to pay me to get certain benchmark numbers. They pay me so that things work the way they expect them to work. We don't measure that with a micrometer to determine if it's within some, you know, thousandth of a human hair's width of performance. But that's what people do on the internet. And it's just an internet behavior. I don't find people in real life that pay for anybody to do that. That's something they just do to occupy their time or to satisfy their curiosity. But that's not how I've been able to sustain a business. No one's ever hired me to do that. That's a hobbyist, enthusiast activity or a researcher activity. So please don't get yourself caught up in all that. But you're going to see that on YouTube here all the time. You know, you're going to see people overclocking and they're just chasing benchmarks, testing video cards to determine which video card is best. That's nonsense. That would be like, can you imagine if you shop for a car with that same mentality? You go to the car lot, you see all these cars in the parking lot, and you open the door and you go, well, that speedometer only goes to 140. I don't want that car. You go to the next car, that speedometer goes to 160. I don't want that car either. Here's a car, let's look at this one. This one, the speedometer goes to 220. That's the car I want. Well, you know that car is going to cost you more money, and you know you're not going to drive it that fast because in all likelihood, there's nowhere you can drive it that fast, and you likely don't have the driving skill where you wouldn't do that without potentially hurting or killing yourself. But that's how people shop for computer stuff, or that's the kind of content they're looking for on YouTube, or even on other vlogs and blogs where they're writing about all this technical minutia that, well, for a nerd that's interested in technical minutia might be fascinated. For your average ordinary human being, it's meaningless. Having that information in many cases just leads to you not being happy. You're like, well, that's not good enough. But yet your happiness should be defined, in my opinion, over how reliable the computer is, over how responsive the computer is. Is it doing what you want it to do in an acceptable length of time? Or are you just fascinated with chasing numbers and it has nothing to do with how you use the computer, nor do you have any justifiable use of the computer that would benefit you from getting those numbers? You're just chasing numbers. And that to me is an extraordinary squandering of your precious time here on the planet, which is ironic when you think about it. You're so busy caught up in all the little technical minutia of getting one more frequency that you're squandering your precious time here on the planet that you'll never get back. Which one of those two things really matters? However, if that's a form of hobby or entertainment for you, have fun. But if you're a regular viewer trying to glean information from reviews and other things you're seeing from creators on the internet, most of those creators are extremists. They're not regular average users using their computer or their network in a regular average way. So if you want to be an extremist and you have the time and the money to do that, YouTube is the ideal place for you when it comes to tech stuff. But if you want practical, pragmatic, down-to-earth, what's this worth? What's my return on investment? If you're going to ask the same question a business asks, how does this benefit me to have this? So what if it's faster? So what if the range goes further? If I'm not having performance issues or range issues now, it's not something that would benefit me to have. So I just want you to think about that, and that way you can be happier, I hope. David Graham said, "You're the only nerd I support because you tell it like it is." Yeah, I don't know why that's so uncommon. I don't know why what I do is so unique. But I'll tell you, if the average technical person out there shared this attitude, I would not feel any need to do this. I'd be doing something else. So Jason H88 said the bottom line is in buying a computer or a car is how does it feel? Exactly. You've got to get behind the wheel and you've got to take it for a test drive. It doesn't matter what size engine it has under the hood if the ride is uncomfortable, if the seats are uncomfortable, if the car doesn't have the garage door opener you want, built into it. If the car is difficult to see out of, it has massive blind spots. If the car sits really low to the ground and, it's going to be difficult with all the road debris here in Phoenix, that you're not going to end up breaking the bodywork on the car because you ran over something that fell out of the back of somebody's truck, or that it's going to be expensive to repair. Are you going to enjoy your time behind the wheel? Or are you buying the car strictly to impress other people? And it's a car you hate. It's a car you can't afford, but it's a car that says to the world, look at me. It's your money. And if that's how you want to spend it, go for it. But I would never advise anybody to spend their money like that. But there's nothing illegal about it. I just think it's poor decision-making, bad judgment. That's my opinion. The only car I ever bought without test driving it was that Mustang I bought from Carvana. And I sold that car because I didn't like it when I test drove it. And Carvana says, well, you have 3 days to return it. And I thought, well, I need more than 3 days. This is a big decision. And I don't drive very much, so it's going to take a while for me to put some miles on the car. And the more I drove the car, the worse it got. I thought maybe I'd warm up to it, but no, the exact opposite happened. The more I drove it, the more I didn't like it. What I thought was uncomfortable became excruciatingly uncomfortable. And, because I bought that car without test driving it, and I needed time to evaluate whether or not I was going to warm up to it, my choice was, do I keep making the car payment on this car and the insurance payment for a car I don't like? Or do I sell the car, take a $4,000 or $5,000 hit, and chalk it up as a $4,000 or $5,000 lesson and never do that again? In other words, if I sell it, I'm going to lose $5,000, but if I keep it, I'm going to lose more. Car's only going to depreciate. insurance and registration, all those ongoing expenses. I can lose 5,000 or I can lose 40,000. I'll lose the 5 and get rid of it, cut my losses and chalk it up as a lesson learned. And I will never buy a car without test driving it ever again. But that's me. That's my experience. And if it cost me $5,000 to learn that lesson, it's worth it because I won't make that mistake again, and that'll save me money in the long run. And by the same token, we don't know how a Wi-Fi router is going to perform in your environment. Nobody can tell you that. Nobody can tell you if you're going to get better range. Nobody can tell you if you're going to get better performance. They can guess. They could say, well, in theory, you should. But the only way you know for sure is to buy it and configure it and see if you like it. That experience will not be useful to anybody else. So if you got done watching a bunch of videos talking about how great something is, and then you buy it and it's terrible for you, it doesn't mean now you need to go on a crusade to let everybody know how terrible it is. It's what some people do. The people who did the reviews weren't wrong. They didn't test it in your environment. And other people who bought it didn't necessarily have a bad experience with it like you did. In fact, other people who bought it could agree 100% with the person who reviewed it and said it was great. They could say, yeah, it is great. And maybe it is for them, but it isn't for you. None of you were wrong. It's just your environments are different and your expectations are different. And the unique challenges within those environments, from everything you're connecting to it, to where you've placed it, to what the building is made out of, to how congested the network traffic is in your area, nobody can tell you what it's going to do in those circumstances. You have to make the decision yourself. And if you buy from a place like Amazon, returns are super easy, so you don't have to worry about getting stuck with it. In general, as an Amazon Prime customer, I get 30 days to test things. So those routers, those Wi-Fi 6E routers, I was very slow on how I tested them because I didn't want to make a rash decision. I still get a full refund as long, if I return it on day 3 or if I return it on day 29, it's the same refund. So why not keep it the full 29 days? Try and see if it's me that needs adjustment, or is it just the device isn't suited for me and my environment very well. And in both cases of those two Wi-Fi 6E routers, based on their price and based on my experience with them, I got no benefit from them at all and just put my old Wi-Fi router back and sent those other two back. Those were $500 a piece. So it's a significant chunk of change. But I had them for almost a full month. I didn't have to make the decision quickly. Haste makes waste, as they say. Chris Garrett shares a link to oh, look at that. I see what you're saying. Pull it up over here. That's a nice catch you got there. Did you notice that? Where did it go? Yeah, look at this Dell XPS 700. Images. Yeah, it does look like the router, doesn't it? Isn't that funny? Good catch. Yeah, that brings back some memories. I remember that Dell XPS. Seen a few of those in my day. All right. Well, I will say thank you again to my friends in blue and in green for supporting the channel as you do, as well as to the contributions and super chat from Marvin Jameson and Madi Yoel, Sarge Tech. Oh, I missed Barnsey Breaker contributed 119 Norwegian krona. Thank you, Barnsey. Sorry I missed that. He says, hey, Carey, here's a little support. Keep it coming. Yeah, I apologize. I didn't see that earlier, but thank you. Paul O'Brien. Thank you guys so much. And David Graham became a new member here. Welcome, David Graham, to the Tech Club. Marvin Jameson is a member now for 12 months, which is awesome. Peter VZ became a new member. Welcome to membership. Is it Peter? You say Peter? And Rip City Raider is now on his second month of membership. That's awesome. So the membership gives you access to Monday's members only videos. Then when time permits, I'm trying to make some members only content that gives members the first access to the video. And then my goal will be like to release the video to the public 24 hours after it airs live, but just that the members can interact and see it first and see it live. So I'm trying to do things for the members just for them because they're doing something just for me. And that's a nice relationship. I really appreciate that you guys make this possible. This router was not sent to me by TP-Link. It was paid for with your contributions. And with your contributions, I use that money to buy more stuff that I can display here and go over, show and tell, a review. I'm trying to get my hands on some broken mini PCs. And I think, if they're all the same make and model, I can use donor parts and at least get a couple of them working and make some videos on how I diagnose and repair that. And then when I'm done with them, I'll give them away. And that's all done, again, through the funding provided by you, the viewer. So thanks to those contributors. If you enjoy the content and you don't contribute financially, just know that those who do are the ones that make this content possible. I would not have been able to make it otherwise, and then you wouldn't have had it to watch. So when you see these folks in the chat, please tell them thank you, because they represent less than 1% of my viewers, and they make it possible for the other 99% to enjoy the content with no expense or sacrifice. So that's how much I appreciate that. I will see you all again very, very soon. Links for the product are in the video description, as well as the Windows and Office keys that are sold very, very inexpensively, are guaranteed to work. They have guaranteed support. RoboForm, 30% off RoboForm subscription for new RoboForm customers. It's a password manager. If you've never used one, you'll wonder how you ever lived without it. My Amazon store link is also there. You can make any purchase from Amazon. If it's my link that took you to Amazon and you purchase anything from computer equipment to toilet paper, I make a small commission, but I don't know who you are and I don't know where you are. All I know is somebody used my link to make purchases and how much they spent and how much of that is my commission. That's how I know how much Amazon owes me. If you don't tell me you did it, I don't know that you did it. And so I appreciate those of you that use my link when you're shopping at Amazon for literally anything, because you're contributing anonymously and it's not costing you any more money than not using my link. It's not changing your shipping. It's changing nothing. All it's doing is it's kicking a little commission back to me. And it's a little teeny tiny bit of commission. But if a lot of you do that for stuff you were going to buy anyway, well, that money goes right back into Amazon so I can buy more things. So anyway, that's how the business model's been working, so I can avoid, traditional sponsorship, making commercials for companies like all the big tech channels do. And there's nothing wrong that they do that. It's just not what I want to do. I don't have any interest in having a corporation tell me what to say. for what I'm allowed to say. That's just me. Thanks for hanging out. Hope you enjoyed today's video. I'm going to get this router set up. I'm going to start using it, and I'm going to follow this review up with a part 2 once I've got some time with it under my belt. And I'll also verify those questions to TP-Link support regarding 220 volt compatibility and the data transfer speed on the USB 3 port. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again very, very soon. Till next time, bye for now.